please allow me to briefly introduce our guests. Mr. Jim Rogers is a world-famous investor and finance professor. Mr. Wang Shi is founder of Wanke, founder of Deep Rock Group, the chairman of Wanke Foundation. When we often say life is wilderness on social media, maybe it's because we want to escape the challenges we are dealing with right now. Or maybe we are just curious about how big and diverse the world really is. In his book, Investment Biker, Around the World with Jim Rogers, legendary investor Jim Rogers shares his global investment adventures. He uses a travelogue style to explore the customs and cultures of different places and show his unique perspective on the world. In the first chapter of Investment Biker, Rogers writes, "By nature, whenever I travel, I always look for promising investment opportunities," which sets the tone for his global journey in the book. In today's dialogue, we will invite the two guests to discuss the meaning of life and how to make valuable investments as we celebrate the new edition of Mr. Rogers' book, Investment Biker. Now, let's hand over the time to Mr. Jim Rogers.
Well, thank you. I'm flattered to be here. I mean, Wang Shi is certainly quite an adventurer, too. I mean, I've seen him rowing, climbing mountains, doing all sorts of things. So Wang Shi is the adventurer and the worldwide traveler. I will tell you quickly, I first went to China in 1984 and fell in love. I fell in love with China. I couldn't believe how exciting the country was becoming. In America, they told me the Chinese were evil and vicious and dangerous people, but I realized very quickly, no. China had been a great country 3 or 4 times, and it was becoming a great country again. And China is going to be the next great country in the world, whether people like it or not. And many people don't like it. Doesn't matter. China's on the rise again. And by the way, China's on the rise again partly because of people like Wang Shi.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
I say something. And thank you, Rogers. And I'm very glad to see you on the TV. Really very special. And I admire and very glad for your the book. For your book, to say something. You answered, you focused on China, that the last century is the 1984, right? For me, at that year, you're very famous in the Wall Street as a finance investor. But for me, I only beginning to build my company, only beginning. But as you are a very famous investor in Wall Street and beginning your other adventure around the world. But for me, only beginning adventure for how can as the businessman only beginning. So that our experience hugely different. But for me, very glad to talk with you this project. I think that what about that when we are the purpose, how to promote that sport, rowing sport, right? Remember that we met not at the Wall Street, not at your adventure on the road, but at the international racing, rowing racing championship. I clearly remember that one in France, another that in Italy, and then to other countries, especially very special country, that is China. We promote the China's that rowing sport. I clearly remember that. You're very famous. Only other people that have known you. You are very famous. The adventure both in Wall Street and travel by motor car around the world. But you are cox as the championship between Cambridge and Oxford. You were that cox of the belong that cox.
Well, Guangxi, right? I want to say that one of the reasons China is rising again is people like Guangxi. I mean, when Guangxi was born, China was poor. Now China's rich because of people like Guangxi. And I fell in love with China when I went there in the 1980s. And my children speak Mandarin now because of China. And I live in Asia now because of China. I'm very excited about what has happened and is happening in China. You know, I wrote that book partly because of what was happening in China. I could see the world was changing. The world was changing dramatically, especially Asia.
Actually,
because of people like Guangxi.
Oh, yes. Okay. Jim, I want you explain something about this book. I think you don't mention me, right? I'll say something because in China, audience very familiar with me. But you about this book. You, right? Let's introduce this book. Yeah. Maybe some at least 15 minutes talking this book. Talk
about the book for like 15 minutes. Could you?
What I saw in China when I drove across China was an entirely different country changing because of people like Guangxi. I realized that China had a long history of great success because of smart people. China is the only country that has been on top 3 or 4 times. Rome was great once. Egypt was great once. Britain was great once. But China's been great 3 or 4 times. And it's happening again. Whether we like it or not, China is on the rise again, and China will be the most important country in the world in this century. Many people don't like that, but it doesn't matter. There are many people in China like Guangxi who are making the country great again.
Mr. Rogers, you have been friends with Mr. Wang Shi for many years and shared a lot of history. Both of you have huge interest in Chinese culture and in rowing. And I think today isn't just about the discuss of the book. It is also a chance for 2 of you old friends to catch up and share memories.
Well, Guangxi has climbed Mount Everest twice. I never climbed Mount Everest. I did climb Kilimanjaro, but that's easy compared to Mount Everest.
For me, I think that by a motor car travel around the world, that take more adventure than climb the mountain. You mentioned your experience about how you at that time your choice to and around the world, not only once and twice. That you, please, the audience in China, especially youth, they more interested about you not me. Today we're talking about your travel experience, right?
Yeah. Wang Shi is right. I did drive around the world twice because I wanted to see the world. I grew up in a small village and I wanted to see everything. So I spent 5 years driving around the world because I wanted adventure. And here I am. I wrote books about driving around the world because it was a great adventure. For me, it was a great adventure. And it taught me a lot about China, driving across China back in the 1980s.
Mr. Rogers, investment banker, recalls what Mr. Rogers saw, heard, and thought when he traveled to different countries and tries to explore the possibility of the world. Nowadays, many people in China are stuck in endless competition at school and work. In China, there is a very popular term, 卷, which means involution, and also another word, 躺平, which means lying flat. It shows how hard it is for young people to get a job and their worries about the future. How should we deal with the real questions about education and work? Or are these the even questions in life?
Well, my answer is everybody, not just Chinese young people, but everybody should try to see some of the world. It will teach you a lot about yourself, and it will teach you about the world, but it will also teach you about China. The more you know about the world, the more you will know about China. And China is rising again. So the more you see of the world, the more you will understand about yourself, and the more you will understand about China.
Mr. Wang Shi, what's your take on this question?
I agree with Rogers' idea, even strongly. I agree with James' idea. That not only in China that the behavior all around the world, something like this. I think I talking about that idea, not to Rogers, especially to Chinese young people, right? So I say some Rogers, I want something I talking about in Chinese, please, right? I mean, 我就来这个样，就是 I speak in Chinese. I give an opportunity listening Chinese, right? 来就是说，罗杰斯啊，你可以看到来讲，他真的是对中国文化是非常喜欢，非常喜欢。所以你看他谈到什么都谈到中国文化。他环球世界上，当然写的不仅是中国了，但显然他对中国呢印象特别深刻，他们欣赏中国的文化，所以罗杰斯呢对中国的感情是非常深厚的。刚才主持人提的这个问题，就是关于这个如何是躺平，是吧？如何来卷？罗杰斯来讲，他这不仅仅是一个中国的现象啊，全世界到这里都这样一步。我想说的第一个，我来用中国话来讲呢，就是过去啊，罗杰斯刚才讲了非常重要的一点，他来谈到我来讲，就是我那个时候所处的时代，中国还很穷，是吧？也就是很穷的时代，他那时候改革开放到了中国。所以他看到怎么见证了中国的富裕起来，来看到我也富裕过来，变成一个是因为我们像类似我这样的人，一个在努力往前做，对吧？所以他来提到我，也很配合我相提头。那我们再看到我们那个时代呢是很穷的一个时代，所以那种想法和现在是完全不一样。我们现在年轻人很多来讲，就是我们解决了吃饱吃暖的问题了，就再面对的新的问题。这种问题呢，不仅仅是中国面对的，发达国家、欧洲、美国、日本、韩国、 都在我们之前都发生了。所以现在年轻人面临年轻人遇到这些问题啊，我们不宜过得焦虑，好像这是个中国人的问题，这应该全球的问题。所以在这种情况下，但是呢，无论穷还富裕，这里有一个很主要的就要我们要解决的问题呢，我们富裕了之后，我们是不是很多穷的时候呢，我们的一些那个穷的时候的我们的精神气质好的方面是不是要继承下来？这是刚才为什么还很在乎像就罗杰斯也很欣赏我年轻人也请我当这个书的来者，当然要继承，但更多的我们应该勇敢的面对未来。罗杰斯至少是重视传统中国文化，他一定有道理的。这是我想来跟我们的听众说的啊。Rogers, I explained what I say in Chinese. I say first, I say Rogers you mentioned about some problem and now youth face in China, and not only in China, also other world that the same. In the Europe, in America, something like it. But your idea, I strongly agree with you. Your idea, I strongly agree with you. But I mentioned what about traditional? Why the Rogers that admire me? Because that the last century, the 80s, that time in China, very poor. At that time, Rogers visit China, and also visit China again and again. He watched, noticed how the progress or how the from poor to that rich, that progress. He watched. So I admire China's the beginning, huge beginning, that exchange, right? So today, what about for the future? So China's many that traditional culture that are important for future. So that's why Rogers very like Chinese traditional culture. So, but for my idea, in China audience, they more interested in your story. Today, your Rogers that adventure story, both in Wall Street and around the world, that interest you. So please say some story about you, right? Please.
Please.
Yes, Guangxi, I had a wonderful time. It was a great adventure driving around the world. And in the book, I talk about some of the things that happened and some of the things that I learned. But I want to tell both of you again, the most important thing I learned from that trip was that China was on the rise again. China had been great 3 or 4 times. China had collapsed a few times. But I realized that China was going to be the next great country in the world. I learned that close to the ground. When you're traveling around the world, you have to learn a lot. If you can see and if you can hear. And I could see what was happening in China. I was afraid because American propaganda always said China was evil, but I could see the Chinese were not evil. They were smart, hardworking, ambitious, disciplined. They educated their children. When you travel around the world close to the ground, you have to see a lot. And I certainly saw a lot crossing China on that trip and in later trips as well. But probably the most important thing I learned was that China was on the rise again and it was going to be great again. And here it is. I mean, look out the window. You can see China has become extremely successful. And I could see that happening. And I wrote about it.
In a world where it feels difficult to find dreams, how did both of you discover your own dreams and stay committed to them?
Well, I guess I was not smart enough not to. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to see the world. I knew I wanted adventure. Now, yes, I could have stayed in New York and worked on Wall Street my whole life, but I wanted to see the world. And I knew I would learn a lot if I traveled close to the ground. I had to learn a lot. If you have to cross a border, you learn a lot. If you have to find a place to sleep at night, you learn a lot. If you have to find food in a foreign land, you learn a lot. So I learned a lot. But for me, it was wonderful. It was fun. It was adventure. It was exciting. It was something new every 10 minutes. And that to me was fun and exciting. I grew up in a small village, so I wanted to see everything. And China was the most exciting in those days, and still is.
我来回应一下啊，看罗杰斯刚才讲的是非常清楚了啊，就是要出去能干什么，能有什么体会，能有什么经历，这样来进行比较。只有出去，你才能有收获。第一个，你会发现它是一个知识上的，非常想获得新的知识，而只有出去，而且甚至经历一些小山村的这些经历，都给人让他感受非常非常深刻。他说到这里，我就想到现在中国，你会发现，现在更多的中国人，中国年轻人更多的走出去了，更多去新疆啊，去青海啊，去西藏啊。虽然还是在中国，但我们中国非常大，就像一个世界。本身这样呢，要比在出国在游历啊，相对来讲容易一些。但如果能像罗杰斯这样的，我们再勇敢一些，我们不仅仅要在中国，还要走出国门。这种经历是非常非常有意义的，才找到了自己的位置，才知道自己想获得的什么，自己将来做什么。甚至包括在旅行当中，到晚上他也在想，经历当中也在想，也是在一个旅游路程，整个这样的一个过程当中。那再一个，我就很想说的，罗杰斯呢是给了一个非常重要的这样一个信息概念是什么呢？就是我去了全世界这么多地方，我和中国比较，我才发现各方面这方面呢，就是在中国各方面他感到做得非常好。甚至在这过程当中妖魔化中国，他说中国不是这样的，甚至诋毁中国，说中国不是这样的。那我们看到今天了，今天已经到了中美这样的一个情况下，作为华尔街一个著名的投资人，他能在这种时候公开这样讲，就是非常非常难得的。我想两点，第一点呢，他相信自己的经历、自己的感受。他如果没有这样的驾着摩托车环游世界，当然相当一部分的要穿越苏联，穿越再到中国来，整个这个经历，他收入当中相当一部分写在中国的经历，他没有这种比较，他是没法说出这样的话的。所以两点吧，就第一点，他这种经历在比较。那我们现在也看到了，中国现在对国外了解的清楚吗？我们不是很清楚。我们在国内很多叫躺平内卷，本身这里就有一个什么呢？就有一个抱怨。有点不提供机会了，是吧？这样我们没得做了啊！你看你们上一代多少创业机会啊，上一代多少你们在发财呀，我们现在没机会了。那我只有躺平卷平了，应该再放大点看，不是这样的，是吧？我们应该是这样来看，像学习罗杰斯是什么呢？要走出去，要去闯，不但就是了解中国，了解国外，进行比较才知道。那我想来谈谈我的一些体会啊，我是2011年呢，只身出去到国外去学习了。如果不是在那国外学习这段经历，我真正对中国的了解还不是很多，就看到国外的视野是怎么看见中国。但是真的像罗杰斯这样的，能生意上非常成功，又探险这么成功，又这样的能了解中国，真的是不多的。所以从这个意义来讲，我觉得就是来中信来这本书能给罗杰斯的再版是非常有意义的。Rogers, I explained what I only say. Rogers, something like you that because you mentioned that 10 years ago, that many famous foreigners, they say, they want to mention China, they very big, very good. But today, not many say something like this. But you are exception. You only very clearly to public say China not evil, China very good, very for the future. Advanced world, China how to play more important role because you believe something how been happening now in China. The advance step by step, and also Chinese traditional culture very rich. That culture also can as a background for what, not only for China, also for world. So what about your some idea? For me, I think this idea, this belief, very important. So that why to that public to for you the book that I made 20 years ago, right? In the book, and again that renewal for the book to promote in China, very important. So that what about hope you say your experience, very important, especially the book. What about you want to say something about you now? Why you very strongly still believe China not evil and very good for the future, for the world?
Well, I don't have to tell Wang Xi how the world has changed enormously in his life and in my life. Certainly, China is an entirely different country now than it was 30 or 40 years ago. And it's an entirely different country because of people like Wang Xi, people who have realized they could make things better and who have seen a lot of the world. And if you've seen the world, you understand your own country better, and you know things that can be better for you and for other people. So travel is perhaps the best education that one can have, especially if you travel on your own. It taught me an enormous amount. It made me fall in love with China. I could see what was happening in China. I could see it was extremely exciting, and it gets more exciting every year. And that's what I wrote about. Now, there were some places that were not very exciting. Some countries in Africa were pretty poor and not very much happening. But all of that you learn, and it helps you contrast what's happening in China, what's happening in Nigeria, what's happening in Brazil. You learn these things by seeing the world and understanding, oh my gosh, this is very different. And that is, for me anyway, it was a great education. And I will repeat to you, I learned a huge amount driving across China a few times. And I realized that everything I had been taught about China was wrong, but you will learn that about nearly every country. If you go and travel on your own, you will see that many of the things you have been taught or many of the things you think are not correct. And you get a new world. You find a new world and a new view, whether it's China, Argentina, whatever it is. If you go out there and see the world close to the ground, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted adventure, but I also wanted to learn. So for me, the adventure was exciting, yes, but the education was also extremely exciting because I learned about an entirely different world from the United States where I grew up.
And when we open this book, we see Mr. Rogers travel different cultures and business developments across when he travels across Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, and also we also see Mr. Wang Shi's adventures and discuss topics like local cultures and environmental protection. How can we understand the meaning of life, and how should we view courage and breakthroughs in life?
Well, one of the first things I learned was what made me happy. And I realized that seeing the world made me happy, partly because it educated me. It taught me a lot. I don't know if you've been to Hami. Hamigua comes from Hami. But if you go to Hami or you go to the west, to the Chinese desert, you learn a huge amount about culture, but also history and what has happened in the world before. And you also can find good Hamigua in Hami, very good Hamigua. And so I loved finding out about the world. Yes, sometimes I had to sleep in the desert. Sometimes I had to sleep under the stars. Sometimes I had to find my own food. But when you have to do things like that, you learn a lot about yourself and you learn about the world. I mean, Wang Shi has been many places. He knows everything is different in other parts of the world, but it teaches you. It teaches you about yourself, but it also teaches you about your own country. And China was, for me, a very, very exciting place because it was changing. And that was educational, but it was adventure. It's a great adventure if you have to find your own food or your own place to sleep. I mean, Wang Shi has climbed climbed Mount Everest twice. That's not easy. You learn a lot when you do something like that. And I learned a lot traveling around the world. Of course, there were problems. Of course, it wasn't always easy. But that for me is exciting and educational.
我非常同意罗杰斯的刚才强调的这个2点啊。第一个就是教育，非常非常清楚的。我们现在中国的年轻人呢，现在应该说教育已经很普遍了，但是我们教育当中呢，能形成一种独立自主的，来在教育上自己到底学什么东西。这里我想来谈谈的就是现在我们也学习啊，就是太没有目的性，没有目的性，就学你到底做什么。你像罗杰斯啊，他来谈自己的教育，我是非常清楚的。因为和他在一块相处了，我们就知道他本来是在耶鲁，之后呢都研究生，到了这个牛津去。Rogers, I mentioned about when you accept education first at the university that Yale, right? Yale, and then after that you to Oxford, right? To Oxford. I curious about in Oxford, you play the sport that you experience the sport outdoor, that's the rowing sport, right? You as the rowing sport role as the cox. Can you explain why in university you like different kind of sport? You like rowing and as the role that cox. What about the role cox and your experience about cox? Can you explain some of your feeling I think the caucus very, very important role, right? As a leader.
Well, when I drove around the world and across China, I found out about the Chinese stock exchange, the Chinese stock market. There was no Chinese stock market 40 years ago, but as I drove around the world, I found out that China was opening a stock exchange. So I went and I began investing on the Chinese stock exchange. But I don't think I would have known that or could have done it if I had not been driving around the world. And when you drive around the world, you learn a lot of things. You learn about food, everything. You see some amazing man-made sites, but some natural sites too. I mean, the Taklamakan Desert, the Chinese desert, is astonishing. It's extraordinary. It's beautiful. You might not make it alive, but if you do make it alive, it is such a beautiful, exciting place. But Guangxi, there are many places like that. I mean, you can cross the Alps in Europe, or you can cross the mountains in South America. All of these things are there. Maybe you've seen pictures, but a picture is not the same if you see these things in person. I remember I went to Xi'an and saw the terracotta warriors. I had seen pictures of the warriors, terracotta warriors in Xi'an, but it is nothing like real life. When you see those terracotta warriors in Xi'an, in real life, for me, I had never seen anything like it. And one of the amazing things is, of course, the Chinese did that thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago. But it was a shock to see it in person. And there are many things like that. The Taj Mahal in India is a shock when you see it in person. Many things are. And that teaches you a lot. First of all, it's exciting and fun, but it teaches you a lot as well. So if your viewers have not driven across China, I hope they do. I hope you drive from the east to the west, all across China. It will be such an exciting, fun, and educational experience.
Okay, Mr. Wang Shi recently shared his plan for a second entrepreneurship focused on carbon neutrality. Both of you have achieved great success in your entrepreneurial journeys, yet you still keep your curiosity and courage to explore the unknown. Could you both share your thoughts on what defines the entrepreneurial spirit and its key elements?
Well, I mean, Wang Shi knows probably better than me, but what I have found is if people do what they love, they're probably going to be good at it because they're having fun and they love it. And people who do what they love are usually successful because they're having fun. Every day they get up and start having fun. And that usually leads to success. If you look at the great entrepreneurs in history, in any country, they are people who loved what they did, and for them it was not work, it was fun. And that has been my experience driving around the world. Many people do only what they love, and they have great success because they're having fun. They do what they love. So my best advice for any entrepreneur is to find out what you love the most and do it. Don't listen to other people. Do it and do it your way. And you will have fun and you will probably be successful.
Roger has mentioned everything, not only entrepreneur, as the personal, as the young people. So you do something about it for fun. That idea that in China, normally we say that what about that interesting, the life. I think that is the same. So now in China, how to get money? I think that for fun to get money. So I think I don't think so. As you say, some entrepreneurs very successful. They have got a lot of money, but they're not happy, right? Use for fun, interesting. You have interesting to do something. You can for that purpose, for that vision, you can to something to overcome some difficulties. You can for that God. But what is the purpose of that? For fun, for happy, that's very important. But also you for fun, you to how find that fun, how find that interesting thing. That is very important. Now in China, for my opinion, that a lot of young people confused. Which is fine, I can find, right? So that I think that the education, that education problem. So then now, at that time, what about Rogers, that some experience that for example, even cannot clearly before you find that your purpose, that your fun, go abroad, travel to experience some feeling you can find, easier find your purpose. So that my suggestion for young people.
Thank you. In Investment Biker, Mr. Rogers wrote, "By nature, I always look for promising investment opportunities when I travel." Now, 30 years later, can you share some new investment insights in today's world that you have gained? What investment philosophies have stayed the same? Mr. Rogers.
Well, the main thing that has stayed the same is if you want to be successful, find some change. If you find something that is changing and changing for the better, you're probably going to find successful investments. And if it's something that you don't know a lot about, if you find it interesting, then you will learn a lot about it. And if you can know a lot about something that is changing for the better, you're probably going to be successful. Things that are cheap, where there's positive change taking place, you're probably going to be very, very successful. And you're probably going to have a lot of fun. And you're going to have a happy life if you can do that. So stay with what you know a lot about. Stay with what interests you, what you find interesting, and you will probably have good success. It's certainly not easy making success, but if you stay with what you know, if you stay with what interests you a lot, you will probably be very successful.
And can you share some new insights of investment opportunity in today's world?
Well, since we're talking in China, we've just had a huge epidemic, a huge disease all over the world, and that hurt a lot of people, that hurt a lot of businesses. So if you find the ones that were hurt, that are adjusting and adapting and changing, you're probably going to find huge profits. I mean, tourism, for instance, tourism collapsed during the epidemic. But some people will make a lot of money from the collapse. I mean, airlines, hotels, restaurants, There are many people that will benefit and change and will make success. So find the things that are suffering where people are adjusting and going to be successful, and you will make a lot of money. All you have to do is look out the window. Look out the window in your own town and find the people who were hurt and who are changing and are going to be successful. I mentioned hotels, airplanes, restaurants. There are many people that were hurt that are doing well now. Those might be opportunities.
Jim, how do we balance the risk and return when facing investment opportunities? And what can individuals and companies do to form their own investment philosophy?
Well, this is not easy. First, I want to make sure you understand this is not easy. It looks easy, but it's not. So what you have to do is be sure you know a lot about what's going on, what is changing. Don't go down to the bar on Saturday night and listen to people talk, drink a few beers and then talk. Don't listen. Stay with what you know. Everybody loves to give you a hot tip. Hot tips are exciting and fun. Do not listen to hot tips. Stay with what you know. Stay with only what you know is going to work, and then you will be successful. We all want to be rich this week. I want to be rich this week. It doesn't work that way. Just stay with what you know.
Okay, my last question. The pandemic showed us how important global cooperation is. While AI technology has made huge advances, some believe that we are now in an era of deglobalization. So my question is, what are your thoughts on how globalization and deglobalization might shape the future of human society?
The main thing which you just said, which everybody needs to understand, is the world is constantly changing. No matter what we think is correct today, 2 years from now will be different. Something else will be the answer. So please understand that the world is always changing dramatically, and that some of that change will be very good, some will be bad. But if you can learn to look for change, if you can find something that's cheap and that's changing, you're going to be very successful. Try to remember cheap and change, and you will probably be successful if you know a lot about it. Only if you yourself know a lot about it. It's not easy. It looks easy, but it's not.
Mr. Wang, what's your thought?
I agree with Roger's idea. What about the future? How we change, changing, and some good, some bad, but you how control, manage it. That's very important. But if you cannot, that the background, that the support, that knowledge enough, you cannot control. But you can control, that's no problem. That means I think the idea, two opinion. One, that you have to keep continuing the learning, right, to draw knowledge. And another, you how to balance. What about bad, good? To manage away your choice, so you can successful. Otherwise, you will not enough knowledge to support you. That of course, you maybe you are failure. So that's That means from the book, we can draw some idea. Go out, right? For that world, uncertain world, but very, very rageful, very colorful, that world. That to find some your interest in, and for this the interesting thing, for fun, for happy to do. That's some my feeling about this book.
Okay, Jim, what advice would you offer for individual growth in today's environment?
Well, one of the most important things is don't spend money you don't have. Only spend money that you have, and only spend money on what you know a lot about. Everybody wants a hot tip. Everybody wants to be rich this week. Please do not listen. Listen to Wang Shi. Stay with what you know a lot about. And if you don't know a lot about it, wait until you find something that you yourself know a lot about. And you're more likely to be successful than if you listen to hot tips. Don't listen to hot tips from me or anybody else. Stay with what you yourself know a lot about. And if you don't know a lot, don't invest or wait until you do know a lot. This is not easy. Listen to what Wang Shi says, and you will probably be successful.
A great thank you to our speakers for your time and insights.